Welcome back. So you just watched a few videos with some mid-tech devices like the switches and the static devices, the GoTalk, and you also saw a couple high-tech devices such as the lamp and the Pro Liquidigo, I believe. We will talk a lot more about those high-tech devices next week, but in the meantime, I want to ask you to think about how they're set up. When we're talking about low-tech systems, the topic boards are arranged, one board, one theme. The PECs are the sentence strips, or at least the pictures you can rip off, maybe arranged in a binder through, um, different pages. Then the pods, these are the thematically organized pages that you flip back and forth between. So be thinking about how these high-tech systems are structured. Some considerations for high-tech systems. The first is that it allows for robust language creation. When we're talking about those different components of language that we discussed earlier, the phonology, morphology, semantics, syntax, and pragmatics, high-tech devices really open up the door for learning those and learning how to use them and expressing them. You might not find a communication board in the low-tech system, or maybe a PECS book. You might not find those different, say, morphological breakdowns between, car and cars. They might not have a singular and a plural version of that, which limits the amount of language that the student's able to learn and convey. High-tech systems, you're a lot more likely to be able to either select one or the other or tack on a plural s there at the end of the word, like car plus s. So those are examples of how you can use and learn and acquire some of those more robust language functions with a high-tech device. It really opens it up for limitless combinations of what you can express. Another consideration, you want to start with the end in mind, which means that you might consider placing, a student with an advanced device like a Dynavox, a Topi Dynavox, or LAMP, or something like that. You might want to start them on that right away. The alternative is starting with a low-tech, maybe a communication board, and then when they master that, they can go on to a PECS book, but then they have to relearn a new system and learn how to flip pages, and the vocabulary is in a different spot. And then maybe if they master the PECS, then they can progress to a GoTalk and then maybe a device. Or you can just start them on the device. You don't need to expose all of the vocabulary to the student at the beginning, but at least they'll be learning their way around the device, and they can be starting to build some of the motor pattern memory where, maybe stop is always in the same place on all of the boards. So if you want to consider starting a student with, one of the more advanced high-tech systems that they may be able to grow into, they might be able to grow into it. And if they don't grow into it, then hey, you've still got that same high-tech system, just operating at suboptimal capacity, I suppose. The flip side is that you need to consider the training and the buy-in of staff. It's pretty easy to pick up communication boards and PECs and figure out how to use that across different lessons, or how to use it to communicate with a student. It doesn't take a lot of instructions. High-tech systems are a lot more complex. Sometimes you'll find, teachers or paras may not want to use a high-tech device because they don't feel like they understand it well enough themselves. You also have issues with programming. Maybe there's one person in your building that knows how to program a device. Maybe there's one or two people in your district, your entire district, that know how to program a device. So that can be a consideration. Cost is another factor, but that does have an asterisk next to it because, it might be misinterpreted. So devices can be expensive. That expense may fall to the school district, or the parents may, pursue insurance reimbursement for their own personal device that they can take with them even after graduation. Even something like an iPad with Pro Liquidigo and an indestructible case can be hundreds of dollars, which can be quite an upfront cost for the family. Or a device can be tens of thousands of dollars if that's funded by, say, the school district. That might be a big expense for the school district. But here's the asterisk. Communication devices can be used to improve not just the student outcome, but to reduce their demands on the school system. So, try to follow me here. A student that is more enabled in their language may not, demonstrate the same negative behaviors that might require the school to provide an ABA therapist. Or the student might be able to communicate more effectively with a high-tech device and, not require a one-on-one assistant. Or maybe the burden for speech therapy will be reduced, especially by the time they get to high school. So while it looks like a significant upfront cost, that's not always how you want to think about the issue. It might be a long-term investment too. The last consideration is, with regards to wholesaling to all students, it's not one size fits all. There's, one particular device that I really love, and early on in my career, I was just tempted to recommend it for everybody. But it doesn't take you too long to realize that different devices have their pros, they have their cons, and what works for one student may not work for someone else. So you don't want to fall into that trap of, just trying to get everyone on the same communication system, either for your own personal preferences or for the, sake of classroom communication. So our end game here, the goal is SNUG, spontaneous novel utterance generation, or the ability, for your communicator to make a sentence that's new and original and unique to them. You've really made it as a teacher when your students are communicating in ways that you haven't taught them, because that means they're exploring their language, they're doing it themselves. It's personal to them and it's limitless. They can, hopefully by the end they can arrange a nearly limitless number of combinations for their communication messages. So one example, these are actually, I think they're all real examples. Sprinkle bagel. There was a child that wanted a donut, but donut was not on their device. It wasn't one of the options. But sprinkle and bagel were. So they went up to their mom. They said, sprinkle bagel, or I want a sprinkle bagel. And the mom was like, what? Sprinkle bagel? But then she put it together. Bagels, okay, they're these round carby treats, sprinkles. Oh, you want a donut? The student was like, yeah. So that's, it's definitely a novel utterance generation. They made that up themselves. Dead remembering time. I think this might have been from an adult AAC user that had to attend a funeral. Funeral was not one of the options on their device, so they kind of worked around that gap by choosing the words dead remembering time through that word combination that was new and unique to them. They were able to communicate fairly effectively what they wanted to say. Another student found that when they combined she and it very quickly back and forth on their device, they were able to use profanity. She, it, she, it, she, it. So, maybe not desirable communication, but it was something that they were doing themselves to create their own message. And that's not really something you'd be able to do on a low-tech device. My screen recorder is going to cut out in like 20 seconds, so I'm going to go ahead and tack the rest of this PowerPoint onto a fourth video. So just scroll down and click on the next video to keep watching your lecture. Thanks.